I can stay at home now and watch all the female driven talk shows, Betty Springer and Johnny Jones and, well, Ellen will probably be the same. Ellen won't change, but you know, now it's our time. We can relax. We can wear a nightgown if we want. Imagine that, guys.
To your future predictions, I think what's coming 10 years from now, there's going to be a big cultural meltdown, I feel, between what it means to be a man and a woman from my generation. Because right now, there's a whole bunch of blurred lines and all that, and it's just getting crazy right now.
He's saying there's already blurred lines and it's just getting crazy right now.
But the fact is, I saw a stat yesterday on Snapchat saying, 3 million more women are graduating from college every year than men. The result of that is going to be, major income inequality coming up. And when it comes time to raise a family and stuff, my generation's pretty lost from in terms of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, the roles that we have to play. And I just don't think that we're ready for that, going from being completely lost of what it means to be, a man or woman, to being thrown into the hard position of being the reliant spouse.
There you go. That's where we put it. That's where we left it. That's where we're going to take it from. And I'm going to just rattle off a few stats here right now to you so you know that we're coming in pretty clear. On average, Ben's call, thank you very much for your call, first of all, Ben. I believe it was Ben. On average, college graduates make more money than non-degree holders. That is fact. You can go look that up, on average. In 2015, adults with bachelor's degrees took home more than those with high school diplomas. That's a stat by almost maybe 25,000. That's one study that I read, okay? More women are currently enrolled in college than men by a pretty good margin, it seems. Not huge, but decent. So you do the math right there. If college graduates make more women are currently enrolled, then in time, women are going to be the primary breadwinners. That's where we are. That is where we're headed. Are we headed for a big cultural meltdown? That's what we're going to discuss. I mean, my first instinct is that this is whack, That's just my instinct. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm saying that's what my instinct. And why do I think that? Because I'm a man, right? A man is supposed to be the man. It's wired in him to be so. I grew up in a time when the idea was that the man was the father and the woman was the mother. That was the idea. It was also the reality of the way that things were, that men were the breadwinners, And it also fits scientifically, like, men are the stronger. Women could give birth. The man protected the woman after she gave birth. The man went out and took care of the family while the woman stayed in the home and fed the child. The woman had milk coming out of her body. Women have milk and eggs in their body. I mean, that's a Denny's, really, that they've got going on over there. But so all those pieces fit genetically, right? It made sense. And that was kind of the environment that I grew up in. Now, is my instinct correct in that? Yeah, I think it is correct. I think my instinct is correct, that because it's my instinct. It's what I believe. It's what I think intrinsically. But now I got to take my instinct and put it against reality. I am old fashioned. I'm more of a traditionalist, So things change and things evolve. And so I have to see, well, does my instinct match up with the reality of things? And against the reality that women are going to become the breadwinners, they're going to become what in our day and age is kind of the hunter-gatherers in a way. That means that things are going to change. It's the truth. Things are going to change. Well, right now it's pretty wild. There are more male suicides than ever. There's been a huge uptick in male suicides. Go look it up. Walk outside right now. Don't get hit by a man, okay? Because men are killing themselves, jumping off of buildings, drugs, whatever you want to do. Men are finding death. They are hunting death. They feel like they don't know what to do with themselves. A stat that I read that I found, I'm not saying this is completely factual, but you can look it up for yourself. Middle-aged men between 45 to 64 saw the greatest uptick in suicide rates among any male age group, increasing by 43% over the last 15 years. So 43% more men killing themselves over the last 15 years in that age group. That's pretty huge, bruh. That's a lot of dudes saying, for some reason, I don't know what's going on. I'm checking out. I'm tapping into these oxycodons, or I'm going to drown myself, or I'm going to, put a hose in my mouth and hook it to the exhaust, or hang myself. And a lot of men are also doing the thing where they jerk off and hang themselves at the same time. And I don't know if that's like a biological reaction that men are dealing with. I mean, you don't want to feel inferior, especially those men in that age group. They grew up in a time when really the man was the man. The man had the paddle. The man had the man was at war. The man was, arm wrestling and biting animals if he had to, and, being dangerous and cutting off his arms, and doing things that men had to do to survive and to take care of things, and fixing the tires and, all types of stuff like that, murdering their spouse. I mean, that was I'm not saying that's a popular thing, but that was something that a man had to do that he felt like made him a man. And now that's obviously threatened by a lot of these men. And I say, if you are feeling depressed about your role as a man, I say, don't overreact. Don't be one of these jumpers, or one of these pill monkeys, or one of these fellas that are just, filling their mouth with heroin and just riding the lightning and seeing if the devil's going to come and get them, or seeing, going to meet their maker. Don't be that guy. Hold the line. That's what I say, because there are bigger forces at play. The reality is that it's going to take more time for us to adjust to these new circumstances, to the fact that women will be the primary breadwinners. There's going to be a reaction. There's going to be an overreaction. And that could be what we're dealing with now. But it's going to take longer for us to actually evolve internally for us to be able to accept this. It took us this long to evolve into whatever we're doing now. So even though there's pressure in the mainstream media, there's forces at play out there that are saying, you got to accept the way it is right now and do this and do that. Those are all manufactured forces, Those are mainstream media. Those are aggressive feminism. Those are things that are, you can't take all that at once. You have to realize that we as men are going to have to evolve into it. So if you're feeling like you got to jump off of something, hold the line, weather the storm, let's see how it plays out. Don't give up. Don't give into the pitfalls, drugs, excessive masturbation. That's another one. The pornography, all of that, all the things that weaken the manhood and then are going to then make you feel more susceptible to these things that are going on. Because also feminism is a huge business that's out there right now. It's a huge business. It's a moneymaker. And there's a lot of women out there screaming about feminism and about how to be a woman who don't even have any children, which is fine. You don't have to have children, but they're yelling at mothers who are raising kids, that these women need to be out in the workforce. And there's just a lot of things going on right now that aren't fully adding up. So I say just hold the line, man. If you're thinking about, cutting off your head or your arteries or something, hold the line of that. You need to feel, you better, men better be wearing tampons tomorrow, like relax, okay? Don't buy into all that bullshit. And then secondarily, in the meantime, when it's going to take us a while to evolve into this tertiary being, this tertiary human, or the secondary, the non-breadwinner, I say embrace that shit, dude. It's like when you're driving across country and you get tired, let your lady drive now. It's their turn to drive. That's fine. You don't think, fine, you want to get out there in the workforce? Cool. It sucks. It sucks. Well, oh, what is that? It sucks. That's what that is. Maybe we've arrived, man. Maybe we finally get to take a break, I can stay at home now and watch all the, the female-driven talk shows, Betty Springer and Johnny Jones and, well, Ellen will probably be the same. Ellen won't change, but now it's our time. We can relax. We can wear a nightgown if we want. Imagine that, guys. You had to get up at 6:30. Now you don't. Now you get to go and ride a bicycle, a stationary bike from 9 to 10, and then you get to put your nightgown back on and eat snacks and be having chocolates at home and be fancy and relax. And you get to shop online. Maybe this is our chance finally to just be housewives. So I'm saying until genetically we adapt, how we react should be, one, don't kill yourself. Don't lose it. Don't shoot up a bunch of secretaries who are getting promoted. Don't do that. I say embrace it. Embrace it. Be the fancy ladies if we want. It's time for us to take a break maybe. Maybe we're so stressed out that it's time for us to take a break. Maybe now we have that choice. Now we can learn an instrument, pick up a drum, pick up a flute, a clarinet. You want to go to war, ladies? Go. You want to fight in the front lines? Go. Maybe now there will be a less pressure. Maybe now as women become the providers. See, that's what I worry about though, is if women are becoming the providers, how are they going to then treat us? Are they going to treat men the way that a lot of feminists claim that men have treated women? Are they going to, how does that work? And I think different places will react differently to this as well. Like growing up in Louisiana, this sounds scary, This sounds like I'm going to be inferior. This sounds like I'm not going to be a man. I'm not going to be able to play football or hoops, or put on my sneakers. But now in Los Angeles or in Seattle, it doesn't sound like anything new probably. It just sounds like whatever, who cares? It's about the money. It's about, it's about us, being able to provide for our kids, and, just the ways of thinking are different. So we have to recognize that too. The perspectives on this are going to be different. There's still a manhood perspective when you get into a lot of America. But in a lot of cities,
in the middle of the day because our data is being held hostage. So I thought it would be a good time to call about the future. They say over the last 100 years of technology was driven by physics. In the next 100 years, the star of the show is going to be biology. We already have the ability to edit our DNA using this technique called CRISPR. That's CRISPR with no E.
Okay, so he's saying that, speaking about the future, his data at work is somehow held hostage today. It must be an in-work term. They must be having some technical issues there at his work. And so he thought he'd call about the future, since that's what we're talking about. And his comments here are that they can already genetically alter us with this thing called CRISPR, CRISPR, and that biology is going to be the star of the show in the next 100 years. Let's continue to listen.
And that means we're kind of at step one to creating superhumans and things like that. And my big concern is, what's the backup plan if we screw up everybody's genetics in some unforeseen way? Like if we all go out and get DNA work done to make our dicks bigger, it all might look fine and harmless until our children's children are born with skin that just falls off or something like that. I want to propose maybe taking one of these big square states and fencing it off for people who can volunteer to remain technologically stagnant, kind of like the Amish, but maybe set it to 2014 or somewhere they can have flip phones and fast internet at home, but they hold off on the crazy shit so that if we doom ourselves with a science project, then the species can be rebooted from these legacy folks. Would love to hear what you think. I really dig the show, and it's great how you're helping the younger set reflect on themselves and figure out the world. I've got some ideas about this. Maybe I should share in an email if that's not.
Awesome, man. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Brian, but thank you very much for that call. Wow. So genetically, he feels like, according to this CRISPR, that they already have the first, the ground floor to be able to build superhumans. Basically testing. And what's that going to be like? We're going to be cavemen. We're going to be someone's cavemen. You realize that? And he's proposing that as they test these things and try them, since we don't know the long-term effects, that we keep a certain I don't know what it's called in science. It's called a certain group of people that we don't change at all. He's saying that we take a state, and I'm gonna throw Mississippi out there, dude, because you know how I feel about Mississippi, and that those people don't change at all. So that in case they fuck everything up and the genetic adjustments aren't cool, that now we still have a regular people to go back and reboot from. We have basically that hard, we have that just like you would your original software. That's interesting. Now, if I'm gonna ask you guys this question, you can chime in on this as well if you want to call in. If you had that option to be one of the tested, or to stay the legacy, if you had the option to be one of the tested, or to be, someone that just stayed the line, what would you do? Would you take that chance to be superhuman? I mean, your head could fall off 2 days into the experiment. Or would you hold the line and live out the current life